Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think that we really, at this point, need to put this in perspective. This picture is much bigger than all of us. It's bigger than General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford. The issue before us is not whether or not we can afford to help you. The issue before us is whether we can afford not to help you. This is a big, big issue facing the survival of America. It's an American issue. We are at a time similar to the Titanic. If you recall, it wasn't because the Titanic ran into the iceberg. The problem with that Titanic was it didn't turn in time. And on the bleached bones of many past great civilizations and nations are written those pathetic words, too late. Where are we now? Here we are at a time where I hope we don't move too late. What are our options? They're very small, and I think we should focus on them. One is we have a bundle of money that is available. The Congress has approved. Not $700 billion, but $350 billion. Now, the Treasury Secretary has seen fit to already spend and allocate $290 billion of that. And in a way that was not the way that many of us had first designed to get the troubled assets. That leaves us with $60 billion. The two most crying needs, as I see it, are to stop the drain on the housing foreclosures and to help the auto industry. And we got just enough money to do that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the big picture is that we're moving into the most critical time in this economy, when clearly 48% of the retail sales will be made during this next 6 weeks. You think we got problems now. If we come out of this period in January without consumers spending money or having confidence enough to do so, we really are going to be up the creek without a paddle. I think the two best signals we can send, and I would hope this Congress would realize that the American people are watching us to see whether or not we will do like the Titanic and move to turn the ship too late to help the consumer. Now, we've thrown $290 billion at the banks. They've got theirs. Some of them didn't even want it, to try to get them to lend it. And they're not even lending it to your dealers, many of whom are on the verge of going out of business. That's who the consumer deals with, the dealer. So I want to take just a moment here to ask each of you if you would agree that if we give you this money, and by George, I hope we do, because I think, not only do I think, I know you need it. I represent a district in Georgia in which the Hateville motor plant was closed. Ford, you know where that is, in my district. The Lakewood General Motors plant closed. That's in the middle of my district. And then on the north end, the Doraville General Motors plant closed. That's 3. But something funny has happened. We've had several Kia plants open. And now we're sitting on a deal in foreign affairs that we're fighting tooth and nail that says we want to increase our trade, and nowhere is our picture more clearly defined than in this fact. Last year, 700,000 Korean automobiles were imported into our country. You know how many American-made cars were exported from us into Korea? Less than 5,000. We got a terrible problem here. And so I want to ask you, because we talked about the dealers, if you would agree to setting up, if we give the $25 billion, to get assurance from the Treasury Department that we could have $1 billion in a receiving or revolving loan fund that could range from 7 to 10 years at below market rates. In other words, have a mechanism that will allow dealers to obtain access to critically needed capital directly through the Treasury Department. Your dealers need that. The banks are not lending the money. If we don't put some mechanism in here to help you to make sure that some of this money, $1 billion is not that much of it, to set aside to help the dealers. And then secondly, if you would declare or help us to make sure you take the lead, you're asking for the money. None of your dealers are suffering, as are the minority dealers, the African American, the Hispanic, these guys that are just coming on. We need to make sure if we give you this money that you would ask that either the president or SBA director would declare ethnic minority disaster loans under the current SBA authority. If we do those things, we will be helping most directly, not only the overall industry, but I would like to ask if each of you would just simply nod, my time is out, but if you could nod your head or say, yes, we would support getting this capitalization and available capital for our dealers. Is that yes? Good. Is that yes? Good. Is that yes? Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Henserling, you're allotted.
So the first questions will come from the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start out by, first of all, congratulating you, Mr. Chairman. Our Chairman, Frank, has done an extraordinary job in crafting and coming up with a very, very good piece of legislation that hits at the critical and crucial need of providing relief for homeowners and families. We recognize fully in this committee that too many homeowners, too many American people, millions literally, are just hanging on by their fingernails. This, as I said yesterday, is the most critical economic crisis since the Depression. And we must not let this generation of Americans down, just as Franklin Delano Roosevelt and those members of Congress rose to the occasion to save America. Had it not been for that kind of very incisive, well-timed, critical public policy of the government getting involved and coming and doing what the government is in place to do, and that is to fix a very terrible situation. And so I just commend you, Mr. Chairman, for what you've put forward here. And I want to see, as the chairman just mentioned, how we can even strengthen this bill moving forward. You know from the arguments from the other side of the aisle that this is not going to be an easy challenge. There are philosophical differences, just as there were during the Depression. But the American people are the final arbiters on this, and they are demanding action. And as I said before, on yesterday, if we move with the kind of speed and just total full bore ahead, and in a matter of hours, we made the decision to bail out Wall Street. And we did that, in my estimation, properly. And that was a role that government had to play, because I believe world markets would have collapsed from that. And with that same eagerness, with that same energy, with that same urgency, we must move to help these homeowners and families. So with that, I just wanted to make that comment, Mr. Chairman, because I think you've got a good bill here. We're moving forward with it, and we're open to how it can be improved. Now, I'd like to just ask a few questions about, I'm concerned that we may not be moving fast enough, and that this bill might need to have some more features to it. I'm very concerned about any families that might, and homeowners, that might fall through the cracks. I think we might want to address that, because so many of these investors that have bought up these mortgages are very hesitant to refinance and restructure. And I'd like to see if there's something in this bill that we can do that can make sure that they don't fall through the cracks. I think that there might be also the idea of, if it gets down to the bankruptcy level, that we make sure a bankruptcy judge can have that authorization to demand that these mortgages be refinanced and restructured, lowering the principal as well as the interest, and taking into consideration what the chairman has been saying a long time ago, that we should understand the lowering of the property values and the value of that home is less than it was when they purchased the mortgage, so that we have to take that into consideration as well, and perhaps have that bankruptcy judge to be able to make that determination. I wanted to just ask, if I may, my time is wrapping up, but on your points, and I thought you made some very good points. All of you made good points, Mr. Shelton and Ms. What's this? Okay, thank you. What would you suggest that we do to address your three concerns of, I think your three concerns were the March cutoff date, for example. What date would you think would be sufficient for that? The sunset provision, which I think you're right, because some of these things are going to come through in the next 2 or 3 years. And how would you apply, how would we write in the bill to increase the neighborhood involvement that you're talking about? And thank you for your patience, Mr. Chairman.